Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay, it is 6 a.m. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvahutam Parijina Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vikamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Hare Krishna Prabhus. Welcome to our study of the Nectar of Instruction. And today, last week, we heard, well, the first verse was about the very basic principles of controlling the senses. And yes, last 2 weeks, we've been talking about the 6 things that ruin bhakti, right? The things that are impediments to our devotional creeper. Atyahara prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha jana sangaschalo yamcha sadbhir bhaktir vinashati. So now starting today and also next week, we are going to be studying what are the 6 positive things. Utsahan, nishchayad dharyat, tat karma pravartanat, sangatyagat sato brite, shadbhir bhaktir prasidhyati. So utsaha means with enthusiasm. Nishchayat means with confidence. Dharyat means dire, patience. Tat karma means various activities. Whoops. Somebody has to mute themselves. Still, who just got on? Okay, now it's okay. So, tat karma means various activities that are favorable for bhakti, and then pravartanat means engaging in those activities. Then sangha tyagat, and that means giving up the association of people who are not devotees. And sata like coming from the word sat, means the great previous acharyas. And brite means to follow in their footsteps. And then sadbir, whoops, somebody has to mute again. Sadbhi means of these six. Oops, again, somebody needs to mute. There's some noise. Bhakti means devotional service, and prasidhyati means becoming successful. So there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service: being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regulated principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, remembering Krishna, abandoning the association of non-devotees, and following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure complete success in your devotional service. What a beautiful verse. What a beautiful verse. So I have some things that I've underlined here or highlighted. So Prabhupada begins by saying that bhakti, devotional service, is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. Its substance is practical activities. And Prabhupada gave us such a wonderful philosophy, and he also gave us such practical ways to practice it. So it's not speculation, it's not mayavad, impersonal, maybe this, maybe that, and it's also not imaginative ecstasies like sahajiyas and people who take bhakti very cheaply. So it's neat. So those are the 2 kind of extremes that it's not. And then what it is, it's practical activity. Practical activity. And then Prabhupada gives, there's again, somebody didn't go on mute. And then Prabhupada says that bhakti is a sort of cultivation. And as soon as we say cultivation, we must refer to activity. So sometimes people think that to attain spiritual perfection, you're like in the Gita, we hear, to go off into the forest like Arjuna wanted to do, and to not perform activities. But bhakti means activity, but it's spiritual. Cultivation of spirituality does not mean sitting down idly for meditation, as some pseudo-yogis teach. Such idle meditation may be good for those who have no information of devotional service. So it's not bad. But for this reason, it is sometimes recommended, and for this reason, it is sometimes recommended as a way to check or to stop distracting materialistic activities. But devotional service, however, not only puts an end to all nonsensical mundane activities, but also engages one in meaningful devotional activities. So it's kind of like a progression from we're doing activities that are material, and then some people think, okay, we should stop material activities. But bhakti goes beyond that. It combines those 2. It combines doing activities with not doing material activities. And then it puts us in doing fully spiritual activities. And so we're very active, right? We get up early in the morning, we immediately pick up our beads and we chant Hare Krishna. If we're near a temple, we go to the Mangalarti, we lead the kirtan, we see the pujari doing activities. We are dancing, that's an activity. Then we're worshiping Tulsi Devi. And then we're doing another activity, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the best activities after that, we're taking prasadam. And then if we're living in a temple, we may go out and do book distribution or pravachan or whatever. And as householders, we may be working in a job, but it's active, active, active. It may be internally meditating on Krishna, and remembering Krishna as we're doing these activities, but it's not sitting idly, as Prabhupada said. It's not That's very hard to do. If we had to do that, ISKCON would be very, very small. Right? If we all had to give up our households and give up our wife or husband and go and, it would be very difficult, but Prabhupada gave us spiritual activities to do. So he's emphasizing that in the beginning of this purport, that to do favorable bhakti, it means doing spiritual activities. And if you think about it, the real way to give up things that we're trying to give up is not just to keep on saying, I reject, no, that's very bad, no. We have to fill it with something good. You have to have an alternative, a higher taste we talk about. So that's our challenge, is to get that higher taste and to do spiritual activities, and to the extent eventually that there's no time for anything else. We don't have any time or interest in the material things, the material activities. We want to, because we're getting so much pleasure from the spiritual activities. Okay, so that's the first lesson in this purport. So what are your questions or comments about that?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Navdeep Mataji here.
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In one of the sentences here, Prabhupada is saying, devotional service, however, not only puts an end to all nonsensical, mundane activities, but also engages one in meaningful devotional activities. Are not all devotional activities meaningful? At least the way Prabhupada has defined devotional activities.
Yes, so that's what he's saying. But engages one in meaningful devotion. Yeah, so all devotional activities are meaningful. So he's not. Yeah, we're not reading too much into the English is not necessary here. So he's not saying that some devotional activities are not meaningful. Some no. He means the meaning. He means to be saying devotional activities that are all meaningful. Mm-hmm. And we understand that, right? That I think I told that story about cleaning the temple in Krishna Balaram Mandir, didn't I?
I don't recall.
Oh, well, because sometimes in India, some devotees say we want to be a pujari, but we wouldn't want to clean the floor.
Yes.
Right. So Prabhupada said that just like in Vrindavan, Krishna is black marble and Balaram is white marble. And so the pujari is worshiping the black and white marble. And then the devotee, the floor is made of black and white marble if you've been to Vrindavan. Mm-hmm. And Prabhupada said it's totally non-different, whether you're sweeping the floor of the temple or decorating the deities, is exactly the same spiritually, exactly. And so all kinds of devotional activities are meaningful, even the little things that we may do that no one else will even notice. Krishna notices, because Krishna's not impressed with the activity we do. He's impressed with the service attitude. When we offer him bhoga, he tastes the bhakti, not the paneer. Right. Does that answer? Is that okay, Mataji?
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's not easy for us. Sometimes we'd like to be, like to be up there, being the pujari, and everyone's noticing us, right? But actually, as devotee, nandanam, najanam, nasundarima, I'm not interested in those things. I'm interested in developing my love for you, Krishna. But good question, thank you. Other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, we hear from you that devotional service is about doing some practical activity too.
Yes, Shamakun Prabhu.
If we compare this with the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, where Krishna gives,
Krishna is calling you.
so in chapter 12, Krishna gives a gradation.
Yes.
Just if you can, I mean, from verse 8 onwards, he gives a gradation of what needs to be done.
Correct.
If we go with verse number 8, I'm just looking at the book in front of me. Verse number 8 says, concentrate your mind only upon me. And verse 9, Krishna says, if you cannot concentrate your mind on me, then do Abhyasa Yoga by process of repeated chanting. And there, Krishna Chakravarti Thakur says that the first type of bhakti using internal senses has subcategories, Smaranatmika and Mananatmika. So he says best is Smarana, which is using the internal mind and remembrance faculty. If you cannot do that, use your external senses. So can we say that this verse here is what Rupa Goswami is giving here is at the stage of for neophyte practitioners like us, and what's given in the 12th chapter, the verse number 8 is for a very elevated devotee?
Well, the elevated devotee, here's one way to answer that question, Prabhu. The elevated devotee, the Uttama Bhagavat, as mentioned in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, out of compassion, comes down to the Madhyama platform and like Srila Prabhupada and spreads Krishna consciousness all over the world. So Prabhupada could, he didn't need, for his own spiritual practices, he could have stayed in Vrindavan and, just been remembering Krishna, but he chose. So Prabhupada talks about two kinds of very elevated devotees, the Gosyanandis and the Bhajananandis. You probably are familiar with those terms. So, and Krishna will, so the Bhajananandi is one who is concerned with his or her own spiritual advancement. And the Gosyanandi, of course, is concerned with her spiritual advancement, but then also acts in a way as compassion for all living entities. So the ideal might be to be internally absorbed in Krishna and externally active. And Krishna does say that in chapter 8, verse 7 of the Gita. You could look that up. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. He tells Arjuna to mam anusmara, remember me, like in 8th verse in chapter 10 or 12. And yudhyacha, do your duty. His duty was to fight. Your duty might be to go to the office or whatever, or spread Krishna consciousness. So I think as Prabhupada Anugas, we do, I mean, it's a good point you're bringing up, Prabhu. We don't want to forget our own spiritual advancement, because when we are more, as we make advancement, we can give, the more Krishna conscious we get, the more we can give to others. Yeah. So we do want to really, we want to be careful. What is it? This is not the International Society for spreading the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we want to find that balance, because as you're pointing out, Shamkun Prabhu, in our platform, it's good to keep busy in bhakti. As Prabhupada once said, the goal could be to just sit down in Mayapur and chant Hare Krishna. But because you can't do that, I've given you all these big projects. And so he's given us many lifetimes of service, and we should cultivate our inner life, our inner bhakti. I mean, that is our Gaudiya tradition. You read Nectar of well, this book, Nectar of Instruction, the later verses, the Nectar of Devotion, it's there's a lot about developing our love for Krishna, our love for Krishna. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of emphasis on in ISKCON that when you get Lord Chaitanya's mercy by serving his mission, then he awards you higher and higher realizations of bhakti. So it's a question of balance. You know, we don't want to go, you know, service, and, you know, our job is just shnick, shnickety, giddy, ray, shnick, shnickety, giddy, you know, every few minutes we try to get one round done here and one round done there. And it's also like, you know, I'm just Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Prabhu, can you cut up vegetables for the deity? No, I'm sorry, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I can't do that, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So it's a balance. Is that all right, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions or comments? Let's carry on then and get into the heart of this purport. So Prabhupada then talks about the 9 practices of bhakti: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Tasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. And he says that hearing is the first step in acquiring transcendental knowledge. He talks about surrendering to the Guru. And he says that this method of submissively receiving transcendental confidential knowledge is not merely based on mental speculation. So knowledge descends, and we try our best to understand it. And a little later, Prabhupada writes that when by good fortune one comes in contact with a pure devotee and hears from him patiently, one begins to follow the path of devotional service. Such an opportunity is offered to a person who is sincere. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is giving such a chance to humanity at large. So, first part of that sentence, I could, for a minute, I can share the screen with you so you can see it if you don't have it there. This green part here. When by good fortune one comes in contact with a pure devotee and hears from him patiently, one begins to follow the devotion, the path of devotional service. So that almost sounds autobiographical, doesn't it? Because remember we read in the Prabhupada Lilamrita that Prabhupada said he always liked to hear, and that his Guru Maharaj noticed that. And his Guru Maharaj said, this boy, he does not go away. He likes to hear, right? Prabhupada noticed that about him. Mm-hmm. Today, this morning for the GBC strategic planning team interviews about for Gorpanim, I interviewed Brahmatirtha Prabhu. I don't know if any of you are listening to those. Some of them are really, really wonderful. There's usually two presentations every single day. And so I interviewed Brahmatirtha Prabhu, who met Prabhupada in Mayapur. Before there was anything, there was only Prabhupada's. That's it. There was no long building, nothing. And how Prabhupada just had him sit with him he wasn't a devotee, he didn't know anything. And Prabhupada just had him stay in his room with him and sit for 3 days listening to him. And at the end, he said, you are a good boy. And when he wanted to leave, Prabhupada said, why don't you stay a few more days? And then he just surrendered. But the point is that we learned from Prabhupada that his guru said he's a good boy. He doesn't go away. He sits and he listens. And Prabhupada even said sometimes Prabhupada said he couldn't understand what he was saying because it was such lofty English and such high philosophy. But still, he listened. And so I thought it was very sweet that in this purport, it's almost like Prabhupada's talking about himself, that when someone comes in contact with a pure devotee, like he did with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he hears from him patiently. And then he says, such an opportunity, this may also be autobiographical, such an opportunity is offered to a person who is sincere. And of course, Prabhupada is unlimitedly sincere. And then he says that ISKCON is giving that chance to everyone, to humanity at large, to hear from pure devotees, like Prabhupada, and also like us if we're following in Prabhupada's footsteps, and in that way be benefited. So it's such a nice process, nice what we're offering. It's not that complicated, although we have to build big temples, we have to, pay the municipality and do this and do that. The whole purpose of ISKCON is giving people a chance to hear about Krishna. So our goal in one sense is very, very simple, or our purpose is very, very simple. Giving people a chance to hear about Krishna. Okay, so now we get into the actual 6 parts of this verse. I'll share my screen again. And Prabhupada writes, one should, now listen to this very carefully, okay? And tell me how much you are applying this in your life, or at least think about it, okay? One should accept this opportunity to return home back to Godhead very enthusiastically. This is the first word, utsahan. Without enthusiasm, one cannot be successful. Even in the material world, one has to be very enthusiastic in his particular field of activity in order to become successful. He talks about a student, a businessman, etc. And he says enthusiasm means action. This is kind of like Sham Kun Prabhu's question. But action for whom? The answer is one should always act for Krishna. Krishnarte akila chesta. So being very, very enthusiastic. That is the first, oops, where did I, okay. Very, very enthusiastic to serve. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that Rupa Goswami became so advanced because, and Prabhupada's words was, he was always eager to serve. He was always eager to serve. So that is a way to get the great blessings of Krishna and the spiritual master, is to be always eager to serve. So we can ask ourselves, how enthusiastic am I? How enthusiastic am I? And if I'm not that enthusiastic, what can I do to increase my enthusiasm? And one way to become more enthusiastic is to associate with people who are enthusiastic. I think we may have used this phrase before, but Krishna consciousness is caught as much as it's taught. Right? Just like we're trying to avoid catching COVID-19, but we want to catch Krishna Bhakti. And you do that sometimes by observing someone or associating with someone or hearing from someone who is enthusiastic. I'm staring at this picture from Sugunamayi, of Jayapataka Maharaj. So he's so enthusiastic to serve, right? Who else? If I had had a stroke like he had, I would just be a vegetable today or something like that. But he keeps on going with such enthusiasm because he has this blessing to be so enthusiastic to serve Krishna. Let's see if there's anything else about enthusiasm here. And Prabhupada says the enthusiasm is directed through the bona fide spiritual master. And that way, and he teaches us how to use everything in Krishna service. And then Prabhupada gives the example of his dictaphone, which he says the materialist invented this machine for businessmen or for writers of mundane subjects. They never thought it was going to be used in God's service, but we can use it in Krishna's service. So part of enthusiasm is engaging the world in Krishna's service. And therefore, Prabhupada talks one more paragraph, and then we'll ask if you have any questions about enthusiasm. Here, endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. The devotees find the correct means by which everything can be utilized in the service of the Lord. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya uchyate. The execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation, but is practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. So there's that practical again, Shampan Prabhu. Practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. So what are your questions or comments about enthusiasm?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Yes.
This is Achyuta Ravindra Das.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, how do we keep this enthusiasm going, especially during this pandemic time? Any practical tips which you could enlighten us, Prabhuji?
Well, as I said before, the good thing about pandemic is that there's so much online kata. We in the strategic planning team, twice a day we have talks on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. What is it? I think there's like enough pravachans on ISKCON Desire Tree for like 3 lifetimes. Something like that. It is hard, because it's just, I don't know, it depends on our jobs and things like that, but I spend all day looking at my screen and looking at square. This morning I gave a class in China for 2 hours, and then what did I do after that? I don't even remember what I did. It seems like it was a year ago. It was only this morning. China, and then I interviewed Brahmatirtha Prabhu for the strategic planning team. Then I was a student taking a course in the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. Then I had to go to my job, and I was on Zoom all day with that. And now, so it can be draining, can't it, Prabhu? Yeah?
Yes, Prabhu.
It could be draining. So, one thing is we should all try to take some time away from screens, whether it's our computer screen or our phone. Take some time away. Actually try to, read a book that is made of paper, right? And try to get outside in nature if we can, I know Bangalore used to be the air-conditioned city when I first moved to India in the 80s. I know it's not, there's a lot. There wasn't so much traffic when I was in Bangalore in 1987, 88, 89, like that. Not so much. Now it's...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So trying to find a balance and trying to remain regulated, going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, chanting, getting into good habits as far as possible. And getting enough exercise is also important because we're sitting all day long sometimes. So I think we mentioned this last week, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that that exercise for sadhu is walking. So if we want, we can lift weights, we can do this or that, but at least doing some walking is very, very healthy. So take care of our health, try not to eat too much, because it's also, I think in some parts of India, I don't know Bangalore, a lot of the restrictions have lifted. Yeah. So maybe you're going to the office now, but when I'm still working from home, on the 17th, I'll get my vaccine, March 17th. So it's easy the kitchen is so close here, right? It's not like when you're in the office and, whatever
Yes.
tiffin you brought with you, that's what you get. But here there's an unlimited kit, not unlimited, but there's, so it's so easy to go and just snack and things like that. So to try to avoid those things and to keep our area where we're staying clean and neat, and also finding time to some downtime just to talk to some other devotees and Hare Krishna, how are you? And good, yes, how are we going to remember Krishna? Just finding some time for that. And as hard as it is, being really kind to our family members. Trying to really be nice to our wife, nice to our husband, nice to our children. Try to find a way to do some service for them. That's nice, because at least now I know, it's more lifted now, but when we're all in the same place, it can get very intense. Yeah.
Absolutely, Prabhu. Yeah.
So is that helpful at all, Prabhu?
Yes. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
All right. Hare Krishna. Now, in Subhanda Govinda Prabhu, the sentence I liked in this purport is, endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha. Yes. And then Prabhupada in the next sentence defines intelligence as using even material things in Krishna's service. So thank you for that, Subhandu Govinda Prabhu. And Sumitra Gopal Prabhu says, it says in this verse, we have to be enthusiastic in devotional service, but at the same time, how not to be eager, enthusiastic for activities not in Krishna consciousness, which we are dealing with day in, day out. Well, they may be activities that you have to do, like at work. And so, I don't know, enthusiasm is the right word for, let's say whatever our work is, but at least doing our duty. Karma nevari karaste mafaleshu kadacha. So we should do our duty very nicely. Prabhupada gives the example. It's a funny example, isn't it? Of a woman who is married, but she has a secret lover. And when she's doing her household chores, cleaning the house, cooking this and that, she's extra careful. She does the chores even better than usual so that her husband doesn't suspect anything. But in her mind, she's always thinking of her lover. So similarly, we may be at work and we should be better at our jobs than any non-devotee, but our mind is always on Krishna, as much as we can be when we're doing that. So we can even be enthusiastic for our mundane work, because it's also kind of preaching, isn't it? If we're very honest, very clean, very good workers, and everyone knows that we're a devotee, people want to know what is it that makes you such a nice person, and you're bringing them prasadam sometimes and inquiring about their health and just being very good-hearted. And people will want to be like us. They'll want to be devotees also. So is that okay, Sumitra Gopal Prabhu? Okay, yes, he said yes. TK. Other questions or comments about enthusiasm? Okay, now then let's go on to the next one, which sounds almost like a contradiction.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Oh, yes?
Yes. This is Karunika Sita Devi Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, usually we are enthusiastic. I mean that sometimes our devotion is enthusiastic and sometimes we are not. It's just like a fluctuating graph. Can you
Correct.
please show light on that? Why is it so? So few days we are more enthusiastic to chant, read, etc. But few days we don't feel that, we don't get the mood also. We are mechanically doing. So.
I think it Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls it Anishtita Sadhana Bhakti. Anishtita means unsteady. And actually the platform of steadiness is quite it's getting there in advancement, because we say Ado Shraddha, right? Tata Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, and then what's the next one? Anyone know? After Bhajana Kriya?
Anartha Nivritti, Nishta.
Yes, Nishta. That's steadiness. So steadiness is not so easy, right? It comes after Anartha Nivritti. So it's the fact is that we're still affected sometimes by the modes of material nature, right? And so passion gets us very interested in things other than Krishna consciousness. Ignorance gets us very tired and lethargic, and we just want to sit on a comfortable chair and watch TV and eat some haldirams or something like that, or whatever the snacks are in Bangalore. You see, haldirams. So we pray and we just try to. By the way, if you can find it somewhere, someone might be able to find it. Not that I tried to promote my own talks, but I gave a class on the GBC Strategic Planning Team YouTube channel on developing good habits and avoiding bad habits. And if we can get into a good habits, then we can become more steady. Like I was just telling, I think it was Achyuta Prabhu. I don't know what the P stands for, so I'm just calling you Achyuta.
Padaravinda Das.
Padaravinda, yeah, okay. Achyuta Padaravinda Prabhu. It takes a long time to say that name. Must be very long to sign your name. That when we're being regulated, for example, trying to take rest at the same time, get up at the same time, take prasadam at the same time, chant early in the morning, try to get 16 rounds done early in the morning if possible. Sometimes getting into those, that can be, that can lead us to some more, becoming more steady, because what happens is when we have good habits is, like you were saying, if we don't have so much enthusiasm, but we're into a good habit, then we do it anyway. And often when you start doing it, even when you're like, oh, Hare Krishna, I got to chant 14 more rounds, but then we start doing it and we say, oh, this is actually not bad, and we start becoming enthusiastic by starting to associate with the holy name. The only thing we have to be careful of, as we spoke about last week, is habits that, like for example, if you have a good habit to chant at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, but we could almost be like automatic pilot or cruise control, and you just kind of but so we want to also, in terms of our devotional things, we want to do them almost like a practice, not a habit. Brushing our teeth in the morning and putting on clean clothes and keeping our room clean, that's more like a habit thing. But chanting, reading, we really want to do it with full, or attempting to be fully concentration. So don't be surprised, don't be discouraged. Everyone who's a great Mahabhagavat also was unsteady at one time. And they got past that. So it's actually wonderful that we're unsteady, because it should make us humble, and therefore it should make us pray to Krishna, please let me become more steady. Please, let me develop more, be more sincere. So it should bring from within more of a desire to please Krishna. If we look at it in the right way. If we look at it in the wrong way, we get discouraged. Oh, it seems useless. If we look at it in the right way, I think we spoke about this last week. It's the connection between the second verse of the Shikshashtaka and the third verse, because the second verse says the holy name is so powerful, so wonderful, but nanuragaha, but I have no taste for it. And then what's Lord Chaitanya's conclusion? He didn't say, okay, I have no taste, hardball, schnick, schnick, no. He said, therefore, Trinada Pisunicha, let me really take shelter of Krishna and pray for his help. Nadanam najanam nasundari. So that should be the inner mood when we realize that we are not great devotees yet. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, shall we carry on? Let's talk about patience. So I'll show you my screen for a minute. So here, these activities must be executed with patience, and then one should not be impatient in Krishna consciousness. So that's also for Mataji that we just answered that question. Indeed, then he talks about himself. This Krishna conscious movement was started single-handedly, and in the beginning there was no response, right? He had a hard time in Jhansi. When he first came to America, there was no response. But because we continued to execute our devotional activities with patience, people gradually began to understand the importance of this movement, and now they are eagerly participating. One should not be impatient in discharging devotional service, but should take instructions from the spiritual master and execute them with patience, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The successful execution of Krishna conscious activities require, okay, so then we get into confidence. So, let's keep going. Give patience and confidence, and then Prabhu gives that interesting example. A newly married girl naturally expects offspring from her husband, but she cannot expect to have them immediately after marriage. Of course, as soon as she is married, she can attempt to get a child, but she must surrender to her husband, confident that her child will develop and be born in due course. So then after that, it goes into confidence. So patience, it's kind of like we were just saying to Karuna Sita Mataji, we have to, it's such an interesting combination, right? Enthusiasm and patience at the same time. Because sometimes you would think, well, if I'm really enthusiastic, I'm not patient. Or if I'm really patient, I'm not very enthusiastic, right? But this combination is very nice. So very enthusiastic and understanding. It takes some time. One time Prabhupada said, it took me 30 years to come to the level of chanting japa like I am chanting now. Now he might have just been in his humility telling us that, but he was instructing us like that for a reason. So the point is we don't want to get discouraged. We want to say, okay, I have nothing else to do, right? Prabhupada tells that story of, what was her name? Mahatma Gandhi's wife, Kasturi?
Kasturba Gandhi.
Kasturiba.
What's that?
Kasturba Gandhi.
I two people are talking at the same time, so I couldn't hear.
Kasturibai.
Kasturi. Okay, so that time that they got in a big fight, and he kicked her out of the house, right? And he said, just don't come back. Just get out. Don't come back. And Prabhupada tells the story. And then, after a few hours, there was a knock on the door. And he said, what do you want? And she said, I have nowhere else to go, or something. I don't remember the exact story. Maybe it's a famous story. I don't know. But the point is, Prabhupada told the story that should be our attitude. We have nothing else to do except be a devotee. So but however long it takes, it'll take that long, and we'll do our best, right? It's the only, in one sense, in our heart, we say it's the only show in town. It's the only thing that we are interested in, and if it takes 10,000 lifetimes or 10,000 minutes, that's up to Krishna. That's up to Krishna. That's kind of like the final shikshastika, that you can do with me. You can embrace me. You can handle me roughly. That's up to you. What's up to me is I want to serve you. So this patience, is an important quality in a devotee. I remember when I first took up Krishna consciousness, I thought like I'd be a pure devotee in about 6 months, and then I could, see what I want to do after that. I didn't exactly understand the principle of patience. Some questions or comments about patience?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Premdata Chaitanya Das Prabhuji.
Yes,
One
Prabhu.
question I have is because our progress in bhakti to some extent depends on our svabhava as well, because if somebody is by nature, in the sense impatient, he wants the things very fast, and and then some people are aggressive by nature. And some people are
Aggressive,
very aggressive in the sense,
okay.
and some people are by birth they have the patience. So, and those things then reflect in our bhakti progress in bhakti as well, Prabhu. So, how do?
That's a good question. Yes, well, we may have had some advancement in purva samskars, in previous lifetimes. So that's also true. But I think your question brings up a really interesting point. Is let's say our, as you call it, swabhava, our mood is to be very calm and patient and peaceful. Is that material quality the same kind of patience that we're hearing about by Rupa Goswami? In one sense, that could be your question, right? In one sense. So that is an interesting question. We like to we want to take whatever qualities we have, especially whatever good qualities we have, right? We want to take advantage of those and use them to our advantage in Krishna's service. We can't necessarily, you're using the word swabhava, we can't necessarily totally change who we are. But whoever we are, we use that in Krishna's service. It's like I give seminars sometimes on public speaking, how to give a Bhagavatam class, or how to speak, to a large group of people. And the question is, should you try to imitate another speaker? It was funny, in the early days of ISKCON, people who are Americans born in New York, and they were trying to imitate Prabhupada's Bengali accent and speak like him. And it just sounded really funny. And then a little later, sometimes people would try to imitate Hridayananda Maharaj, because he was a very famous preacher in the early days of ISKCON. So I tell people, be yourself, but louder. Make sure you speak loudly enough so everyone can hear. But you don't have to change who you are, but you have to, and there's all kinds of other things that we teach them about public speaking. But the point is that whatever gifts we have, we use those in Krishna's service. And whether we're, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, a man or a woman, or this or that, whatever cards Krishna has given us, so to speak, like if you're playing a card game, you have a certain set of cards, right? So whatever cards we have been dealt in this life, we use that in Krishna's service. So if we're a great cook, we cook for Krishna. If we're a great speaker, we speak for Krishna. If we're really good at cleaning things, we clean for Krishna. Right? If we're really good at making friends, we make friends and try to bring them to the temple or have them give a donation. So we use whatever gifts Krishna has given us in his service. So if we have that, so if we're fortunate enough to have that swabhava of being patient, then that can be very helpful, right? We can dovetail that. We can use that in Krishna's service. If we happen to be a very enthusiastic person by nature, we can use that in Krishna's service. But if we're not very enthusiastic, we have to work on how to become so, because ultimately these qualities are transcendental to whatever the swabhava is, whatever our conditioning is. Is that all right, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, but that sometimes when we are we are being assigned certain services like by our seniors, and then it's not matching our, I don't know how to use the same term, subhava. So then, then it may look like an excuse to escape. So enthusiasm becomes a little bit backseat, that somehow we want to escape that seva because it is not meeting our mood. So how to keep that enthusiasm?
Well, there's two levels to this question. So let's talk about the theoretical level first, and then we'll talk about the practical. So on the Krishna conscious level, Prabhupada says, I'm trying to remember where he says it. He says the devotee should think, I have been assigned to this service by Krishna, and therefore I should do it with, I'm so lucky that Krishna has given me service. And really we should feel whatever the service is, right? Remember I said about if someone gives me the most wonderful service of cleaning the kitchen or washing the pots or cleaning the temple room floor, oh, thank you, Krishna. He's personally assigned this to me. And like that. So that's should be our basic spiritual mood, that, oh, Krishna is so kind. And we remember Krishna and say that this didn't happen by chance. This isn't the fault of my department head or my temple president. This came from Krishna. So that's on the spiritual level. And then there's sometimes practical things, right? That we can talk to, let's say Varda Krishna Prabhu would say, I know you asked me to sweep the floor, but I'm really good at raising funds, and I could probably bring in, 1 or 2 crores this week if you let me go out collecting instead of, and then he says, oh, I didn't realize, okay, go out, So there could be also, on a practical level, some give and take, but we also want to, in such situations, remember that maybe Krishna is trying to teach me something. It's like we were talking about Hriday Nandamar. So I think I may have told this story last week. When he joined, he was a scholar already. And so the temple president said, oh, you are a scholar? Very good. Let me introduce you to Krishna's pots. They need a good washing. So, he thought it would be good for him to do some humble menial service to build his character. So Krishna may do that. Krishna may give us, services that we, like I did traveling Sankirtan for about 11 years when I was a brahmachari. And it was not my swabhava, not my nature to go up to total strangers and try to sell them a book. I'm not a salesman by nature. That's not my, but but book distribution is kind of a transcendental thing. And I surrendered to it. And I always think that, I don't know what, I have no idea what Krishna's mind is, right? But I always think that because I surrendered to that, Krishna allowed me to live in Vrindavan for so many years. I sometimes think like that. I don't know if that's the reason. So it's a little bit of both, and sometimes there's just a practical need, right? Sometimes there's there's just and Prabhupada would say sometimes we do the needful, right? Just like I remember during the tsunami in Madras or Chennai, and so the devotees in Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai, it's not like they really, because a lot of them ended up cooking huge pots of khichdi, not only administering so they went to Chennai because there was an emergency, and they wanted to help people. It was good preaching, and they were so sometimes they went there as doctors, but sometimes they were making these huge vats of khichdi prasad, right? So that was, you have to do the needful sometimes. But generally speaking, it's hard to do the needful for years and years and years and years. Sometimes we have to, try to see if our service matches our psychophysical nature. Prabhupada used that word, psychophysical nature. Is that all right, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
What else? Okay, so we have at least one more to do today, because but maybe we still have a half hour. Okay, so confidence. Where are we? We already did that. Let's see. I'll just look at it this way in your book. Similarly, devotional service, surrender. In devotional service, surrender means that one has to be confident. The devotee thinks, Avasya Rakshibe Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. This is confidence. So confidence, we could also use the word faith, right? That that's the first combination, right? Enthusiasm, patience, confidence. Prabhupada goes on to say, as already explained, one should not be idle, but should be very enthusiastic about executing the regulated principles. Karma pravartana. Neglect of regulated principles will destroy devotional service. In this Krishna conscious movement, there are 4 basic regulated principles forbidding illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. A devotee must be very enthusiastic about following these principles. If he becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends tat karma pravartana. One must strictly follow the regulated principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. In addition to these 4 prohibitions, yama, there are positive regulated principles, which in one sense are more important, niyama, such as daily chanting of 16 rounds on Japamala. These regulated activities must be faithfully performed with enthusiasm. This is called tat-pat karma pravartana, or varied engagement in devotional service. So our chanting is so important. And we try to chant thinking that I have a personal relationship with Krishna as I'm chanting my japa, and I'm in his association. And now here's one of the challenges because of things like this, to try not to look at these things in our computer and check our email and everything when we are chanting Hare Krishna or chanting our japa. So try to put them somewhere else, because it's very tempting to be distracted by looking at our electronics. Very, very tempting. And so we really want to say, okay, this time that I have is time to be with Krishna. And I have nothing else to do for these, whatever it takes, 2 hours, an hour and a half, 2.5, whatever hours it takes for you to chant, if you chant 16 rounds. This is my time to be with Krishna. And I have to protect it. That goes back to, the idea of Karuna Sita Mataji's questions and being regulated and trying to find in our schedule that time that we can chant without being distracted. But it's so, for many people, you wake up and the first thing you want to do, check your Facebook feed, check your email, see if anyone sent you any WhatsApp messages, etc., etc. So if we can avoid that, as Mahatma Prabhu says, he said, we should try to be pure devotees at least until 9 a.m. Like that. So we want to, as Prabhupada's saying here, is the positive side. Okay, we have the 4 regular principles, but the positive thing when we promise the spiritual master is to chant at least 16 rounds. So we want to do that enthusiastically, in patience and confidence that this name is Krishna. His name is Krishna. So that is tat tat karma pravartana, following the regulated principles. We could do one. Well, any questions or comments on that?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I can just share a very short pastime between His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj and one of his disciples.
Okay.
Once somebody was waiting to meet Maharaj, and the disciple went into the office of Giriraj Swami Maharaj to check if he was free. And Giriraj Swami Maharaj was just chanting. But when the disciple asked him, would you like to meet this person? He said, no, I'm busy. So the disciple tells the visitor that my Maharaj is busy right now. So in the disciple's mind, Maharaj was available, but for whatever reason, he had said I was not free at that time. So later on, he asks Giriraj Maharaj, why did you say that you were not available while it looked like you were free? So to which Giriraj Swami Maharaj responds, he said, this is my personal appointment time with Krishna.
Uh-huh.
Chanting is my personal appointment with Krishna, and I will not give that up.
Very nice. And we can do that, just like if you have on your calendar an appointment with a very important person, maybe it's your supervisor or the CEO of the company you work with, you're definitely going to be there for that appointment. So if you can also put on your calendar some appointments to read the Bhagavatam or to chant Hare Krishna, and you keep that appointment with Krishna or keep that appointment with the Bhagavatam as you would, with the same determination as you would to definitely be on time for that meeting with the CEO or the member of parliament or whatever, yes, that can be helpful. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. There's also a funny story one time about Giriraj Maharaj, that a devotee was cooking and Maharaj was in the next room, but the devotee didn't want to bother Maharaj, so they offered the bhoga to a picture of Maharaj. And then they started eating it, thinking that, well, the picture, he must be sad. He ate it through the picture, and Maharaj didn't eat that day because Maharaj said, why are you eating prasadam? Why didn't you serve me? He said, well, I offered it to your picture. Hare Krishna. Other questions about following the regulated principles? Anything? Okay. Then the next thing is about associating with non-devotees. So furthermore, in order to be successful in devotional service, one must give up the association of undesirable people. This includes karmis, gyanis, yogis, and other non-devotees. once Lord Chaitanya was asked by one of his household disciples about the general principles of Vaishnavism, and he immediately said, Asat Sangatyag e Vaishnav Achara. Characteristically, a Vaishnava is one who gives up the association of worldly people or non-devotees. Narottama Das Thakur has therefore recommended Tandara Charuna Sevi Bhakta Sanivas. One wants to live in the association of devotees. So we want to be careful about this. Because there's different ways, again, this can give us a lot of association with non-devotees, right? Probably about 6 billion of them all around the world. So we want to be careful about hearing too many mundane things and associating too much with the material energy. Because like Hiranyakashipu said, that we are like, what is it called? Crystals, right? And if you put a crystal against something blue, it'll look blue. And if you put a crystal next to something that's yellow, it'll look yellow, right? So we are very much we're like a crystal. We're very much affected by who we associate with. Right? There's a saying in some different languages that you tell me who you associate with, I'll tell you who you are. And one of the main functions of intelligence is to choose our association. Choose our association. So we want to swajatiya snighasya, that we swajati, not like, in casteism swajati, but Prabhupada translates it like-minded. We find like-minded devotees and associate with like-minded devotees.
I came too busy yesterday. I was made to come to legal office. I'm in the temple.
Murali Sham Prabhu, you are not on mute.
I have sent them to lawyer, so they have used it.
I hear your voice, but I don't see where you are. But we get to hear your transcendental voice. Very good. So association is so important. So therefore, like the question that Chuta Paravindaksha, did I get that right? Something with a P.
Padaravinda.
Paravind, sorry, Prabhu.
That's
So,
okay.
his question earlier, I'm just going to call you Chuta Prabhu, that'll be easier.
Yes.
That, we can get a lot of association through internet, through ISKCONDesiretree.com and other ways. But we want to be careful about our associations. Similarly, we don't really want to associate too closely with even devotees who are very critical of other devotees. Right? Because we don't want to hear, what is that, Lord Chaitanya? Gramya Katha na Shunibe Gamya, don't hear gossip, don't think, things like that. So we don't really, you see, the problem is hearing the Bhagavatam, we may fall asleep, but somebody tells us some gossip, our ears are big. We want to hear the nectar of some other devotee's misfortune. So we want to try to avoid that and be careful about what we hear. Because what goes in here comes out there. Sometimes I'm sure we've all probably heard Bhagavatam class where it sounds more like the Times of India or Hindustan Times class. Because you can tell the person is reading the newspaper more than they are the Bhagavatam. And so they just start, talking about all the current events. Some current events, no problem. But if it's all that, then we get some idea of what they've been listening to lately. So we want to be careful about who we associate with, what we see, what we hear, etc. Some questions or comments about that?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I think we have missed out on one question which came
Oh, I
on
didn't
the
see it.
chat box.
The one from Pran Vallabha?
Yes,
Okay.
Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Achyut Prabhu.
Thank you.
Whatever the gifts we have, use them in Krishna service. In my case, I am not able to recognize the gifts I received. How to identify them to practice this? Can you please help me? Well, Pran Vallabha, I would ask you, what are you good at? Are you a good cook? Are you a good IT professional? I don't know. Are you a lawyer? Are you a doctor? I don't know what your profession is. Are you, do you have a good sense of humor? Do you, everyone has qualities that Krishna has bestowed upon us. So maybe asking you some good questions maybe can help you think about them. And also you can ask other people. You could ask your friends, or if you're married, your spouse, and honestly, you can say, "What, you know me? What do you think I can offer Krishna?" Somebody has. Oh, there we go. I think we got it. So it may, or you may just have to sit quietly and think about your life. But we're all good at some things. We're all good at something, because that's in one sense that's varnashram. I mean, in one sense, varnashram is very easy. You just engage people according to their nature in Krishna's service. Bas. I mean, there's all kinds of details, but that's the principle. And we're happy, if I'm really good at washing the floor, and if you can wash your floor and go back to Godhead. Is that all right, Pran Vallabha Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu.
TK. Other questions or comments?
Prabhu, I have a doubt. I would like kindly define the word association itself, Prabhu, because in my corporate world, I need to have association with my boss, with my peers, with my subordinates, with suppliers or vendors, in order to successfully, discharge my duties. Even sometimes association with friends also, to have a sort of, you can say, some sort of relief. But all of them are definitely not devotees. But at the same time, I have to survive in this corporate world also in the discharge of my duties, because, as long as people serve in a very, spiritual atmosphere like a temple and other things, yes, association with the devotees forever is possible. But how in otherwise the corporate world is possible, Guru, Prabhu?
Well, I would say the key then is to make sure that we're giving our heartfelt association to devotees. We're revealing our mind. We'll talk about this in the next verse. We're revealing our mind to devotees. We can have official realizations and official association, and even, mildly friendly associations with everyone, of course. But the ones that we really give our heart to and really talk about our shortcomings and talk about our spiritual desires and talk about our Guru Maharaj and talk about how beautiful the deities are and all those things, that should be saved for Krishna's devotees. So there's there's a difference between Jiva Doya and Vaishnava Seva. And so we or even just ordinary dealings are there. But you see my point? We just don't want to, intimately associate with them. They say, oh, come and drink with us, or come, we're going on a weekend holiday, you can please come, and we're going to this place and they're serving meat and alcohol, this, that, right? That we wouldn't want to do. We'd love to do that for devotees. If a devotee says, let's go to Tirupati for the weekend, oh yes, cello, let's go immediately, right? So I think that's, in a situation like the one that you just explained, at least that much we can try to be careful, that we really give our heart and our heartfelt association to devotees. And others, we respect them, we're nice to them and all that, but we don't open up our heart too wide to them. How does that sound to you, Prabhu?
That means, Prabhu, association means only with the people with whom you will open up your mind. That is called association then?
Well, that's one way to define it. I mean, association really just means anyone who we spend time with, but there's different levels of association. That's what I'm saying. You know, it's not just association or not association. There's different levels to it. And so we're talking about the heart level should be with devotees.
Thank you, Prabhu.
How's the weather, and how are we going to make money and all that stuff? That you can be with anyone. Is that all right? DK?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions and comments?
This is Navadeep Mataji again. I do have
Yes.
a question based on the statement that you made a few minutes ago. You said that we should reduce association with devotees who are critical of other devotees.
Yes.
Now that can be sometimes impractical. And the doubt that I have in my mind is, by doing this, are we ourselves not, quote unquote, discriminating? Instead of addressing the issue that is at hand, which is our discomfort if somebody makes a statement about another devotee that sows a seed of doubt in us about that other devotee, is it not better to address it and close it if we are capable and if we are situated?
Sure. Sure, of course.
So, yeah.
Yes, you're right. If we are capable, yes. Or we can word it, somebody's talking about, this devotee, that devotee, and we start saying, well, let's talk about Krishna, or we change the subject to isn't it so that you missed Rath Yatra this year because of COVID, and you start talking about Jagannath and how nice it is to go to Puri or whatever. We can sometimes change the subject, but if somebody is very difficult to change, then we might just avoid their association. So it depends on it's all based on Desha Kalapatra, the time, the place, and the circumstance. The main point, again, is we shouldn't find such fault finding attractive, and that we don't want to.
Mhm.
Right? We may actually say, no kidding, I just heard some really wonderful rumors about so and that we want to avoid, that taste for that. So if we can change, yeah, sure. If we can change the subject, or even if we have the kind of relationship with that person where we say, this is really not going to help our devotional creeper. If you have some issues, maybe you should talk to the temple authorities about that person. But otherwise, could we, when we're associating, could we just talk about Krishna or talk about something that's more uplifting? Sometimes you can say that, sometimes you can't, right? It depends on the person and your relationship to them, and if you're a junior or if you're a senior. But there also are times when people are just too much, and you just have to say Haribol and take them off your Facebook or whatever it is, block them on your phone and just say, I'm not advanced enough to deal with this person, and I have to protect my devotional creeper. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhu. I have a follow-up question because tied to this is the statement that you just made, whether they're junior or senior. How do you determine that who is senior to you? Is it based on the relationship, or is it based on the number of years that they've been practicing Krishna consciousness compared to you? How do you make the judgment call? For example, you may have a good relationship, but still you consider them to be a very senior devotee, but then you have heard them criticize somebody. Then how do you handle that situation?
Well, it's first of all, how do you judge seniority? It's usually not that hard, you can tell how many gray hairs they have sometimes. That helps. you know, I think in the Gaudiya Math, they used to literally go by the day you were initiated.
Yeah.
You know, like that. But it's also sometimes, and what's really interesting is when you read the Bhagavatam sometimes supports traditional culture and sometimes turns it upside down, right? You know, so for example, some of the most advanced devotees are 5 years old in the Bhagavatam, right? Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, you know, and some of the most advanced people in the Bhagavatam are women, Kunti, the gopis, and things like that, right? And some of the most advanced people in the Bhagavatam are demons, Vritrasura, for example. So the Bhagavatam is this interesting that on one hand it supports traditional culture, on the other hand it goes like, whoa, it's all upside down. So sometimes it's by advancement, but generally, at least officially, it's, you know, how many years they've been practicing Krishna consciousness, something like that. I think generally we have an idea, but the hard thing, obviously, as you're kind of hinting at, is when we're dealing with someone who's more senior than us, and we see them doing something that doesn't seem right, or saying something that doesn't seem right, and how do we deal with that? And there's different ways. One way is to try to talk to someone who's their equal, their peer, right? Sometimes it's to bring it to the attention of the authorities. Sometimes it's just like, and don't associate them too much. Prabhupada used to say about his godbrothers sometimes, and also about the Brijbasis sometimes. He said, respect them from a distance. So these were people that were much senior to Prabhupada's disciples, right? And so he said, respect them, don't offend them, but keep a distance. So that may be another way to do it. All right. So we have one more question time. We have 4 more minutes. So Amol Set says, is it not, we cannot compare the person who they are, and we should treat them all are devotee, and if something they are doing is not good, trying to, yeah, basically, thank you for that question, because it's almost exactly the same question as Navadvip Sachi Mataji just asked, you know, that, yes, we don't, so your question is, if we think that somebody is a fault finder, we might be a fault finder for finding fault with them, right? So our basic idea is to respect everyone, and the level of intimacy that we allow ourselves to associate is to the extent that this person is good for my Krishna consciousness, right? And we're going to be talking about this in a much more detail in the 2 weeks from now when we start the 4th shloka. So our time is up for today. Any practical instructions from our leaders and facilitators here?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so
Achyuta,
much
anything?
for. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, yeah, Pakka.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you very much for this wonderful session. A lot of practical tips for us. So we'll try and implement that. Sometimes I feel my heart or my feelings are misplaced because in a corporate world, we have to deal with so many non-devotees and undesirable people. So we'll have to switch gears and see how we can accommodate that.
Yes.
Yeah. So the only reminder I want to share with all the devotees here is that not the following week, but the week of that 19th, I think, that week onwards, we will have our session starting from 5:30 a.m. because daylight saving starts in the US, and hence it'll become too late for His Grace Vraj Vihari Prabhu to accommodate the classes, because it'll become 10 p.m. by the time it ends. So we sort of got half an hour both sides, and Prabhu has been very kind enough to accommodate that. It is still extending by half an hour, which is 9:30 p.m. for Prabhu in the US. So Prabhu, thank you so much for accommodating that.
Sade Panch Baje for you, yeah?
Sade Panch Baje Subhe Prabhu. Thank you. Yes.
Is that okay? And then if everyone will wake up, you'll be awake? Yeah? Okay.
Maybe show of
All right.
hands.
They'll have to be, I guess. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much. And I will see you all next week.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Kripa sindhubhya patitanam
Vaishnavebhyo.
namo namah. Can we stand the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for Prabhu's endeavoring for us? Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Haribo.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Road switch.